From your very first moment of life, you were already praying, not with words, but with the sacred movement of your lungs. Before learning any language, your body already knew the essence that connects with the divine. Inhale, hold, release, and be still. The deepest prayer doesn't need to be spoken. It happens in the invisible, and with each conscious breath, something within you reorganizes. Breathing with presence is more than a healthy habit. It is a spiritual act, a gesture of surrender, and a silent way to reconnect with all that exists. The problem is no one taught us to pray this way. We were taught to repeat phrases, to speak in a hurry, to ask, and ask, but they forgot to say that the most powerful prayer doesn't come from the mouth. It is born in the rhythm of your own breath. In this video, you will rediscover a knowledge that has always been there. We're going to explore why breathing has become the new sacred act of humanity, how this simple gesture, when done consciously, can align body, mind, and spirit, calm your mind, raise your energy, and transform your way of living. And in the end, you will learn a powerful and accessible practice to transform your breath into a living prayer, even in the most ordinary moments of your day. True prayer. Perhaps it has always been this. You just needed to remember. But how do you remember something that was never taught to us? From an early age, we were conditioned to imagine prayer as something external, memorize words, specific gestures, formulas that should connect us with something greater. But what the ancient traditions knew, and what the modern world forgot, is that prayer doesn't begin with speech. It begins with breath. Before any religion existed, there was air, and it was through air that humans learned to feel life passing through the body. Breathing was a sacred act because it was a reminder that we were alive, and alive with awareness. In the Hebrew tradition, the word ruach means at the same time breath, spirit, and wind. In ancient Greek, pneuma also carries this triple meaning. And in Vedic Sanskrit, prana is not just the air that moves, but the very vital energy that animates everything that exists. In all these cultures, breath was not separated from the divine. It was the living expression of divinity itself within the human body. That's why for a yogi, breathing with presence is praying for a Taoist monk. It is aligning with the Tao. For the Sufis, it is tuning into the secret rhythm of the universe. And for mystical Christians like the monks of Mount Athos, the most powerful prayer was done alongside the breath. But over time, language took the place of perception, and ritual took the place of presence. Prayer became noise, and the silence of breath faded away until we arrived here. A breathless generation, hurried, scattered, praying in haste, living without air. And even so, the wisdom remains, latent, silent but intact, stored in the lungs of every human being, walking around without remembering that with each breath cycle, your body does something ancestral, essential, and spiritual. You may have never made a traditional prayer. You may not follow any doctrine, but if you've ever breathed with presence, even for a moment, you've already touched this sacred space. Because breath is the only prayer that transcends all creeds, and the only one that happens even when faith falls silent. When that happens, it's the body that keeps praying. Even without words, without altar, without learned gestures, it continues in silence, performing an invisible rite. With each inhale, life enters. With each exhale, something is released. This is the oldest temple in the world, your own body. But it's not just symbolic. Today's science is beginning to confirm what the masters of the past always knew. Breathing consciously changes your internal state in a real, measurable, profound way. When you breathe slowly, with attention, something inside you reorganizes. The nervous system deactivates survival mode and enters a state of regeneration. The heartbeat slows down brain activity, and the entire body begins to vibrate at a more coherent frequency. This state is called by many researchers psychophysiological coherence, an alignment between heart, brain, and emotions that only happens when breath leads the way. It's as if by breathing with presence, you give your body permission to exist in peace. But this peace is not merely the absence of noise. It is an energetic state. In the view of the ancients, we don't just breathe air. We breathe life force, pranakai, ruamana. There are many names, but all point to the same essence, something subtle, yet pulsing, that flows through everything and animates matter. That's why Taoist masters said that energy moves where breath flows. That's why yogis trained breath control as the first step to awakening. And that's why even today, contemplative traditions from different parts of the world use breath as a tool for presence centering and reconnection. Because when you breathe with intention, you don't just move air, you move energy, you direct attention, you reshape your inner field. And this field, invisible yet sensitive, is what defines what you feel, think, perceive. It is also what radiates from you even before a single word is spoken. Breathing with presence, therefore, not only regulates the body, it regulates the being. You begin to notice that your thoughts become clearer, your emotions more stable, your reactions more conscious, and not because you forced anything, but because you return to your system's original rhythm, the natural rhythm of breathing. This cyclical movement is the body's secret language. To inhale is to receive, to hold is to integrate, to exhale is to release, to pause is to be silent. Each phase of this subtle dance carries a specific power, and together they form a cycle of purification, healing, and alignment. In this context, prayer stops being a request and becomes a listening. You don't speak to God. You listen to life within yourself. And this silence is so deep that it begins to transform everything. Your body ceases to be just matter and becomes a sacred instrument, a channel, a living temple. That's why breath is the new sacred act, because it doesn't separate spirituality from real life. It unites, it reconnects, it transforms from within. And when you learn to breathe as one who prays, you realize you no longer need to search outside because the practice is within you, and the altar breathes along with your chest. And when the altar is within, no ceremony is needed, only presence. Breath is the only spiritual practice you can carry with you, anywhere, at any time, in any situation, without needing a special environment, without depending on anyone. That's why it's so powerful, because it's always with you. And when done with intention, it changes everything. But the question many people ask is, how can we transform such an automatic act into a sacred moment? The answer lies in consciousness, in the deliberate choice to be fully present in each phase of the breathing cycle, and in recognizing that each part of it carries an energetic, symbolic, and spiritual function. Today, you're going to learn a simple yet deeply transformative practice, an ancient technique that can be done in less than 10 minutes, and that allows you to access this state of living prayer effortlessly, without forced mysticism. Start by finding a quiet space. It doesn't have to be a temple. It just needs to be a place where for a few minutes you can be with yourself. Sit with your spine upright, your feet firmly on the ground, your hands resting gently on your lap. Close your eyes. Now inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds. Feel the air entering as if you were receiving a blessing. Not just air life, light consciousness. Hold the air for 4 seconds. In this moment, imagine that this energy spreads inside your body. It circulates. It expands. You are whole. Exhale gently through your mouth for 4 seconds. As the air leaves, release with it any tension, resistance, or scattered thought. It's a moment of surrender, of release. And now pause for seconds of silence. No inhaling, no exhaling, just inhabiting this space. This is the heart of silent prayer. the point where time slows down and the soul reveals itself. Repeat this 444 for cycle 4, at least 5 minutes, and observe how your mind begins to calm, how your body enters a state of stillness, how your perception expands. You may, if you wish, add an anchor word during the practice. As you inhale, think I receive. As you hold, I integrate. As you exhale, I release. In the pause, I am. But if you prefer, remain in silence. The breath is enough. It knows the way. This practice can be done when you wake up, to start the day, centered before bed, to clear the mental field, or at any moment of emotional turbulence. The most important thing is not the duration, it's the quality of presence. And the more you repeat, the easier it becomes to enter this state. You won't just be doing a practice. You'll begin to embody a new way of existing. You'll notice that with each cycle, something inside you is being purified. Breath will become a language of communion, a secret code between you and life. And when this practice becomes a habit, you begin to live in a state of continuous prayer. Not like someone repeating words, but like someone embodying reverence itself. You become the temple. You become the prayer. You become presence. And it all begins with a simple gesture, being fully present in your breath. When this practice takes root in you, something invisible begins to shift, not suddenly, nor with spectacular effects. The transformation is subtle, but irreversible. You begin to notice that what used to throw you off balance no longer unsettles you as much. Reactions lose strength. Urgency fades, and a new rhythm settles in. Breathing as one who prays is like tuning the frequency of your existence. It's living attuned to a state of inner clarity, where answers don't come from a rushed mind, but from the silence where everything aligns. Brainwaves change. The heart beats in harmony with your thoughts. The body stops acting on impulse and begins to respond with awareness. You become less reactive, more receptive, less scattered, more whole, and not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you're living in coherence. This state generates a quiet confidence, a subtle awareness that something is guiding, not outside but within. Your emotions also go through a natural cleansing. What once weighed you down gradually loses its heaviness, and in place of anxiety, a gentle presence emerges. A calm that is not the absence of problems, but a lucid presence in the face of life. And this affects absolutely everything. The way you speak, the way you listen, the quality of your touch, your gaze, your attention. It's as if by breathing with reverence, you remember the sacred that exists in each gesture and begin to treat life as it deserves to be treated, with presence, with respect, with listening. And perhaps this is the greatest change of all. You stop searching for the spiritual in distant places and begin to recognize it in the everyday, in the breath, before answering something difficult, in the air that enters when you wake up, in the silent sigh before sleep, in the pause between an emotion and your choice to act. That's where silent prayer reveals itself, not as a fixed ritual, but as a new way of living. Over time, you stop doing the practice, and you become the practice itself. Breath is no longer just a vital function. It is a channel of presence, a bridge between you and what truly matters. You begin to trust your body more, to listen to the signals of your energy, to care for your mind, as one tends to a sacred garden. And all of this begins to reflect outward. People feel your peace. The environment responds to your vibration. Your communication becomes clearer. Your energy field lighter. Because when you breathe as one who prays, you stop carrying the weight of the world and begin to walk with the lightness of someone who is reconnected with the source. And even on difficult days, the breath is still there. Simple, constant, ready to remind you. You can return always. You no longer need complex rituals. to connect with what is divine, nor sacred words, nor special places. The sacred is already there inside your chest, in the silence between each breath. True spirituality doesn't ask you to escape the world. It teaches you how to be present in it, with more clarity, more surrender, and more awareness. And now you know, prayer doesn't need to begin with words. It begins with breath, with the rhythm you choose to inhabit, with the listening to what happens inside, when everything outside grows quiet. This breath repeated with presence can change the way you live. It can restructure how you react, feel, and perceive. And most importantly, it can return you to your center, to your inner home. As the spiritual teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh said, sitting and breathing consciously is like coming home. This video was not just an invitation to reflect. It was a reminder that the deepest practice already lives within you. It doesn't depend on motivation or belief. It only needs a moment of presence. So when the world screams, breathe. When the mind races, breathe. And when the heart forgets who you are, return to the breath. Everything is there, because breath is the invisible thread that reconnects you to what has never stopped being there, the sacred presence that lives within you. And maybe that's why it brought you here. If this video touched something within you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Write in the comments, "My breath is my prayer," to seal this reconnection. Share it with someone who needs to remember that the sacred begins in their own chest. And now click on the screen to watch another transformative video. Because when breath meets presence, even silence becomes divine.